Hey, this is Kenneth, and today I want to show you guys how to use a stencil cutting machine. I volunteer at the Western Pacific Railway Museum in Portola, California. It's a great train museum, and it is a fully operational demo of historical diesel equipment from the Western Pacific. Since this is a fully functional museum, we actually need to maintain a complete shop. And in it we have all of your standard metalworking, woodworking, and restoration equipment. One thing that you often find that you need to do when you're working with this sort of equipment is that you need to create stencils and use them to label, put warning signs up, that sort of thing. If you've never seen it before, it's actually a very neat tool. This one was made by the Ideal Stencil Machine Company back in the early 1900s. This one has a couple patents on it from 1906 and 1914. So this is a very old piece of equipment. How it works is relatively simple. It's got two separate main mechanisms to it. On the top there is a die set. So this wheel rotates out a complete die set that is your full 26-letter alphabet, numbers, and some basic punctuation. And then on the top it actually has geared a dial indicator to tell you which die is aligned with the front of the mechanism. On the bottom is a stencil holding clip. So this is kind of just your standard clipboard clip right here. And then this actually has a gear running along the full length of it, which in here has a advancement spur that is interlocked to the punch. So what you would do is you would line this up to the beginning of your stencil, select your first letter, so we'll say A, then you would take this handle right here, lower it down, it punches an A, and it advances the bed one letter. So to punch it again, it advances it another letter. Alright, getting the bed out is a little tricky, because on the back of it there are two stops on the ends, and then on the actual guide there's a stop in the middle. So taking your stencil clip, you would take a piece of heavy cardstock, so this is a piece of manila folder, and you would insert it in here like that. And then what you need to do is get this first stop past the center. Only this part of it right here has the retaining sheet to it, so line it up, feeding the cardstock in, and then lining up the guide so that this stop is in between the center stop and this sheet. Drop it in. This release is for the horizontal movement, and advance the stencil into the machine. On the front here is a second release. This is the row release, is moving the machine all the way out. It has a stop here, releasing it. You can then move in one more row, releasing it again, moving in a third row if the stencil was sized correctly. So, moving this out to the first row, like that, we now know that we're lined up on a specific, so you would pick a specific set here, and then we know that we are on a specific row. Now you would select your first die, so we'll pick a D, and then just using the lever, punch it. And we've punched the first letter. So it's that easy. Once you're done with one row, You would then bring it back and realign it with your original mark. There are a couple, it's not a ruler, but there are a couple detents on the guide. If you wanted to do a second row, you would then release the clip and then push it in until it hits the next stop, and you now know that you're one row farther down. So now, if one wanted to try and center it, you would have to do the math to try and figure out exactly where to start each row. But this makes it very fast and easy to make very high quality stencils. So now, in a matter of seconds, I've been able to create what could be a very useful stencil, reminding you to not panic. So this has been Kenneth showing you how to use a Ideal Stencil Machine Company stencil cutter. It's a very old piece of equipment, so if you ever find one of these, grab it and don't hurt it. I'd be sad. But it's a very unusual piece of equipment. Usually you would do this laser. The modern hobbyist would probably do a laser cutter, but the Western Pacific Railway Museum is a very unique chance to see this type of historical equipment in use and in operation. So if you're anywhere near the California-Nevada border, I strongly urge you to come out, check out the Western Pacific Railway Museum, and if you ever see a stencil cutting machine, I strongly urge you to not panic and instead cut yourself a stencil.